Okay, AP Statistics, we are going to talk about how we're going to interpret slope and the y-intercept for your LSRLs or least squares regression lines. So you're probably familiar with how to talk about slope because you've done it in algebra for so long. And of course, when we think of slope, we think of on the XY axis, we think of, okay, here's my y-intercept, and I go up so many and over so many and up and over and up and over, and I make little stair steps. So you come to think of slope just as I move up, I move over, I move up, I move over. As x changes, y changes. And it's okay to think about it that way, but even though it shows you the change of y over the change in x, mathematically speaking, you need to understand it in context as to what's really happening. And so when we interpret slope, we're not just going to say the change of x or the change of y over the change of x. We're going to think about it as something you're predicting. I would predict an increase or decrease of whatever is happening in y for each additional unit of x. So right here, I'm going to say I predict an increase or decrease of whatever the slope is in y for each additional unit of x. And again, we're going to talk a lot about this when we look at our examples. When we're interpreting the y-intercept, again, if you will stop and think about what the y-intercept is, it's where your line will cross the y-axis. So at that point, x is 0. So what you need to do is you need to talk about predicting that in context. So in other words, you're going to say, I predict whatever the y-intercept is for y when x is at no value or 0. So when we talk about x and y, of course, I know I've said this in every video, that's because it's important. We're always going to replace x and y with context because we want to communicate about it. We want x and y to take on meaning, not just be random variables or letters that we're looking at. So when we're interpreting slope and y-intercept, you don't have to use my exact wording that I've got up here, but you do have to understand and capture the meaning. If you don't do that, then it doesn't matter. So some more things that we're going to talk about here and more information that we're going to explore in our examples. We've got formulas on our formula chart, and again, I'm going to show your formula chart and talk to you about that when we're all together in WebEx and in class. And we are going to look at these. What do these mean? Okay, these formulas are going to be useful for us when we need to find our line of best fit or our LSRL when we are given summary statistics rather than a set of data. Because if we're given a set of data, we can plug it into Statlet and find the LSRL. But if we don't have that information, we're not going to be able to do that. So I'm going to show you how to use these formulas, and that will again come in another example video. All right, so of course we're going to use our LSRL equation to make predictions. That's the whole point of using it in statistical analysis, if you will. So when we write our LSRL and we substitute in for x some value, I want to know what y is when x is this, we're going to be evaluating it that way. And keep in mind, there are times you might be asked to find x given y. You're still going to use substitution. And this should be a simple algebraic concept, and I can refresh your memory when I'm going through examples if you've forgotten this. All right, so moving forward here through our notes, we need to talk about extrapolation. And is it good statistical practice? Well, it's not good statistical practice because what it does when you extrapolate, that means you're using a linear regression of a finite data set to make predictions too far outside the domain of the data set you're given. In other words, your linear regression's only good for just a little bit outside the domain. So you have to remember that going farther outside of that, you risk the pattern changing too far outside of the domain that you're given. So it is risky behavior to extrapolate. It's not a good idea. So keep that in mind. We will talk about the next portion of the notes in the next video.